Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Executive Code podcast. You're very welcome, and you can always get this podcast on any of your podcast channels, or you can watch the video of this podcast over on YouTube. And by all means, why not subscribe and leave a review on our YouTube channel? Because what it does is it spreads the message to other people, and other people find out about the actual podcast itself, and it helps to spread the message, get other people, and to help and support other people. You're very welcome here to another conversation that we're having with Nicole. Nicole has another question that she wants to ask. So let's deep dive into that particular question, Nicole. What have you got?
All right, Paul. So I saw a quote going around on social media on Instagram, which read, "The Japanese say that you have three faces. The first face you show to the world. The second face you show to close friends and family. And the third face you never show to anyone. And it is the truest reflection of who you are." Is this how it should be, or should we strive to be the same person always in private and public?
In short, yes. Meaning we should strive to be the one person. I'm going to slightly disagree. And I don't, sometimes I am controversial. A lot of stuff when it comes to finding your life purpose and discussing life purpose and what is out there in the media and online and everything else about talking about purpose and meaning of life is absolutely, from my perspective, is incorrect. And I don't always like, how to say, going against the grain from this perspective. But in short answer, is our mission to be who we truly are? Yes, it is. Where I'm going to slightly disagree is that the third face that has been referred to is not actually really our truest reflection of who we are. That's where I want to disagree. So do we have three faces? I would say we have many, many faces. So if you think about it from what are all the different roles that people play in life? So you'll have your profession role. You'll have you could be a leader. You could be a manager. You could be a business owner. You've got your friendships. You've got your family. You've got your social community, your environment. You've got your spouse, your partner, and you've got yourself. You've got so many different roles that you play in life. And for the vast majority of people, they will have a different face pretty much for nearly every single one of those roles. Now, some of them are quite similar, and yet could they be condensed into three different roles or three different faces? Yes, they absolutely could. So yes, there's the face that you show to the outside world. There's the face that you show to your inner circle. And then there's the face that you have that is just for yourself. But getting back to my earlier point, that's where I want to disagree, because that face that you just have for yourself is actually not a true reflection of who you absolutely are. When you realize and know who you truly are, well, then that's your true authentic self. That's the highest and most truest you that you can possibly be, what I refer to as being your genius you. That's who you truly are. The face that people have whereby they're sitting on the couch on their own, nobody else is around them, and they're going through their own thoughts. That's part of their shadow side, but it's also part of something that depending on the thoughts that they have going on in their mind, is they want to be somebody else, or they want to have some sort of improvement in their life. So that kind of conscious chatter or conversation they have going on in their mind is not necessarily reflecting who they truly are and what their truest self is, if that makes sense. So does that make sense to you, Nicole?
Yes. So basically no one actually sees someone's truest self until the person actually discovers it for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you discover your genius you, and you become the genius you. It's one thing knowing what the genius you is. It's one thing knowing each one of those four elements in terms of your genius drivers, your genius quest, your genius role, and your genius inspiration. It's one thing knowing those four elements, but then you have to be those four elements. And if I bring it back to the genius pendulum, it's when you are in complete equilibrium between you, your unconscious, and the superconscious. Well, then that's absolutely the genius for you. That's where you achieve oneness. So when you attain that, that's absolutely the truest expression of you.
And how can we better integrate these faces? Because you did say at the start that in general, we should be the same person,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And so how do we integrate these three faces? Well, many faces, not just
Yeah.
three, and kind of make them as similar to each other as possible?
Perfect. That's a really, really great question. When you start to live your life in equilibrium and in line with the genius you, because now let me explain what happens. When you're out of equilibrium, you're trying to be subservient to somebody, or you're trying to overpower somebody. You're either looking up to somebody or you're looking down on other people. So you're not in equilibrium. So you will play a role that matches being out of equilibrium. So let's just take an easy example. You could have a manager, and being a manager, if he's out of equilibrium, he will play that role, or she will play that role being out of equilibrium. They're playing a face, or they're playing a persona of that. And ultimately what they're doing is they're looking down on other people. They're looking down on their team that they are responsible for. It's not who they truly authentically are. If you come back from a point of view of equilibrium, that's when you are, integrity from my perspective is when you're fully integrated. Being fully integrated is where your executive center with your unconscious and the superconscious. That's when you're fully integrated. That's where you don't necessarily, people talk about ethics, for example. But that's where, when you're fully integrated, you are operating from that complete space of oneness. So that is just your natural being. It's who you absolutely are. So how you get to that point is literally aligning yourself or being that person. Now, let me say this. When it comes to the reason why people will have that third face that will be referred to in the quote, whereby, as a just reminder, there's a face that you show to your business colleagues, the outside world. There's the face that you show to your family, as in the people that are in your inner circle. And then there's the face that is truly you. The reason why a lot of people won't show that true face is because of fear. It's because of shame. It's because of guilt that each one of them is carrying. So until such times you actually shine a light on that shadow side of you. So that's where people will see themselves as having imposter syndrome, because they're not being their true self. So this goes back to material that we covered in some of the earlier episodes in terms of self-care, self-belief, and self-worth. It's looking at all of those aspects from the perspective of knowing and believing who you truly are and being authentic about who you are. And until such time as you actually remove the fear, shame, and guilt and everything else that's holding you back by being who you absolutely are, well, then you're not being your true authentic self.
And so we should remove that trigger, correct?
You should remove the trigger. You should remove, I don't like using the word should, but I would, the term I use when I work with my clients is I encourage. So it's not a case of you should do, you have to, you need to. It's not about that. It's that, do you have a desire to do it? Well, then if you have a desire, well, then let's do it. It's not for me to say this is what you should do. It's for you to say, if you have a desire that you want to be your true authentic self and know who you absolutely truly are, well, then if that's what you want, well, then this is how you go about it. So it is removing all of those fears that you have, all of those triggers that are causing you to be out of equilibrium. It's knowing your shadow side and removing the elements of your shadow side. And the only way you can remove the shadow side is by throwing a light on it. Just think of it from that perspective. To remove your shadow, you've got to put a light on it. And by putting a light on it from you personally, it's a case of you've got to look at what is it that you're afraid of? What is it that you feel ashamed of? What is it that you feel guilty about? So when you look at that from respect and you put a light on it, now you can go about actually dissolving it. And then it's a case of now you're not carrying that as baggage to other people. You're now getting to know who you absolutely truly are and accept who it is that you are. And therefore, that's now you being your true authentic self. So it doesn't matter what role that you have to play in life, whether you're meeting somebody hugely famous or a politician or somebody from royalty or whatever it is, it makes no difference, because now when you realize, when you know who you truly are and you remove all the triggers where you're looking up to people and where you're looking down to people, it's a case of you see every single individual as being the same. Doesn't matter what role they are, doesn't matter what they do, how much money they have, it makes no difference whatsoever. You see them as an equal. And that's absolutely amazing to see. So that's where you want to felt, again, from my point of view, that's where you're being your true self. So you're not having to wear different masks. From my perspective, many years ago, and before I started on this journey, I wore multiple masks. So, and because there's a lot of stuff that I kept hidden. But, if you go back to the very early part of this podcast on episode 1, 2, or 3, or whatever it was, I tell a little bit about my story. But until that point, I carried, or I wore, multiple different masks. So, and that takes a huge amount of energy. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of work in order to actually keep those personas. So honestly, do you want to work hard in your life, or do you actually want to really, really, absolutely enjoy your life and be who you truly are?
A lot of the fear, shame, and guilt that you mentioned, does it stem from a fear of judgment of other people, judging your actions or your behavior? Or is it more of you judging yourself and you think that other people are also judging you?
It will be down to your own perceptions. So in answer to your question, it'll be down to, you will perceive that other people are judging you, where in fact it may not be. So it's how you perceive the world and how you view and how you see the world from that perspective. So all the fears, it's you that creates them. All the shame, it's you that creates them. All the guilt, it's you that creates them. It's your perceptions of what the world you have actually created. You're in complete control of it. And that's where, when I come back to the law of cause and effect, it's how you perceive the world. And therefore you can absolutely change your world. There's a phrase that many people would have heard of, which is, be the change you want to see in the world. But first of all, you got to be that one person, first of all. But there's another phrase, I'm trying to think of the words, which goes along the lines of, change how you view the world, or change how you think about the world, or whatever it be. But ultimately what it comes down to is, it's your perception on the world. So it's your perception when it comes to fear, shame, or guilt, and or any one of those aspects, any one of those triggers. It's ultimately down to your perception. So can you change it? Absolutely can change your perception. Yeah.
Is there any circumstance where we would want to maintain that perception?
The
Anything,
perception of which?
of people judging you, or is it always bad, and we should just cut
Well,
that out?
if you carry the perception that it's for people to judge you, ultimately what you're doing is you're lowering yourself. So you're lowering your self-worth. So why would you? The answer is no. So when you're not being your true authentic self, or you're minimizing yourself compared to somebody else, or you're elevating yourself compared to somebody else, many people do it. Don't get me wrong. Many people do it. But again, it's what you want to have. Meaning, what's the truest you, and so if you want to look at it from this perspective, when you look at yourself in the mirror, do you like the person that you're looking at? I mean, really, really like the person that you're looking at. And if not, well, then what is it actually down to? So yeah, there will be fears. There will be aspects that you will perceive that, you should feel shame about, or guilt about, but why would you purposely carry those around with you? From my perspective, no, wouldn't.
And so I think the lesson here is to focus on our emotions and what we can do to change our world, and not worry about what other people think, or what they perceive our actions and emotions to be.
It's what you want to get to. You want to get to be able to identify your emotions. It's not about eliminating your emotions. Absolutely not, because your emotions are feedback. But it's a case of, you want to dissolve or neutralize the emotion, because if it's triggering something, or because once something's triggered, it's your perception, then it's kicking into your belief, then it's kicking into your actions. It's the decisions that you make that cause those actions. So it goes into a cycle. So really what you want to do is if that cycle is detrimental to you or it's having a negative impact on you, well, then it's about changing the starting point. And how you change the starting point, you got to change your perceptions. Because again, your perceptions will kick into the decisions that you make. So it's looking at it from the perspective of, so the emotions are feedback, so you don't want to get rid of them. You want to absolutely maintain those emotions as the feedback mechanism. But it's a case of you want to become the truest, absolute truest version of what you possibly can become. And from that, then you're reaching your full potential.
And it's about breaking the cycle of, regret and shame and fear.
Yeah. Because if you're going to carry that around, you're not going to reach your full potential. And can it be done? Yeah, absolutely. Of course it can be done. Yeah. It's what I bring my clients through. It's what I'm currently bringing the members of the Executive Lounge and the Pilots Lounge is currently what I'm bringing them through. Yeah.
Is it ever a complete process, or are we always, working to break these cycles throughout our lives?
It gets less and less is what I would say. What will happen is that you will have bigger challenges to face as you journey through your life and as you get closer to your purpose. So you'll face bigger challenges, but once you start to understand how everything works from how the universe works and how, all the different universal laws that I speak about, when you understand from that perspective and how to work with them, well, then it makes that journey easier. It's not about eliminating challenges. That's not what it's about. The biggest form of heartache for people is they're trying to live a one-sided view of life, meaning that they want everything rosy in the garden. They want everything perfect in the garden. They want everything in their life to be perfect. That's a one-sided view. You can't have a one-sided view. There's always both sides. So once you realize, actually, no, there's both sides to everything. It's a case now, it's how you perceive that world and how you want to move forward in your life from that perspective. Is it a never-ending journey? I suspect not. But let me put it this way. If you think of it from this perspective, there has been identified 4,628 traits in an individual. So when we see other people and we're triggered by other people, it's those traits that are being triggered. So if you've only identified and know a small number of those traits, all the other traits are going to trigger you. So it's how quickly or how fast you want to learn from yourself in terms of owning every single one of those traits within yourself. And that's what makes your life much, much easier, because now you're being able to manage your emotions an awful lot better. And as I said before, when you begin to manage your emotions, you now become the master of your life.
So it's all about managing your perceptions or emotions and not worrying too much about the outside world.
Yeah. And it's not worrying about the outside world. It's understanding how the outside world works. Yeah, that's different. So therefore, you don't become ambivalent, or you don't become how to say. It's not that you don't care. You absolutely do care, because you see the absolute perfection, the amazement in the outside world. So yeah, it's a completely different way of living. An easier and a nicer way, I would say, because then you're not being triggered. You don't have that angst that causes in your life. Yeah.
And it's less exhausting too.
Absolutely less exhausting. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of, just like an actor playing different roles, where you have to kind of turn on a certain role as soon as, you think that the external person that you're with, wouldn't want to see the other roles, right?
Yeah.
So you're constantly acting out your life.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Different roles.
Yeah, that's a really, really good analogy. Yeah, so they actually really want to go through life in acting out different roles. Apart from as you say, Nicole, apart from the effort and the work and the energy that's involved in actually doing it, but you're not actually really living your true self. Good. Good, good, good. I hope this information was good for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this today's episode. If you want to find out more information, come on over to our community. It's called the Executive Code Community. All the links are in our show notes. Or if you go to our website, paulwilliamdavis.com, you'll find a link to the community there. That's where we're literally doing more learning, more training, more deep diving into particular material through the different lounges that we have there between the Executive Lounge and the Pilots Lounge. It's how deep you want to go into an actual material in order to learn how to live your life a lot more effortless. This is what I'd say. So if you want to come over to our community, you're more than welcome. It's free to join. At least then you'll be able to see the other members in the community and join us in the meetings that we have there on Zoom. All the links, as I said, are in the show notes. And if there are any other resources that you have, the resources are available on our website as well, paulwilliamdavis.com. But until next time, I wish you every success.